Texas. We lived in a home that had this huge backyard in Georgia that made me feel like the most popular kid in class anytime playing outdoor games or sports was ever an idea. My backyard would be the spot to go. Since we had a 2-acre backyard, the backyard was surrounded by woods on 3 sides. It also had many trees throughout the yard, a trampoline in one corner, a hot tub, a big detached 3-car garage, and an above-ground pool for a middle-class area. We really had everything you could want in a backyard. There was enough open grass to play any sports, soccer, baseball, football. Anything we even played, hide and seek tag or manhunts as we would call it one Friday. When we were in like 6th grade, my friends and I wanted to have a camp out sleepover in my backyard. It was other Mike, who I'll call Michael, and Jason. We all had to get our parents' permissions, of course, but we were like 11 or 12. And it was a Friday, none of our parents had any reason to say no, plus my family has lots of camping equipment, including 2 tents that could easily fit 2 of us in each one after all of us got permission from our parents. We made arrangements for them to get to my house around 5 so we could play sports in the backyard. We had too many soccer nets in the yard that we used to play soccer too. On 2, we did that for like half an hour. Then we played baseball for another maybe half hour, and after just sitting around for a few minutes, regaining our energy, my parents ordered pizza for us. So we ate around 6:30 or 7 if I had to guess. The sun was starting to go down a little bit now. So now came the time to set up the tents before it was too dark. I was pretty good with setting up tents because I was a Boy Scout, and we just recently learned how to set up tents. My friends helped out a little, but I ended up doing the majority of the work. By the time they finished, it was dark enough for us to play our favorite game, manhunts. There were tons of places to hide in the backyard, so we played in pairs. Mike and I would hide first, and Michael and Jason would hunt Mike and me separately. Our objective was to return to the home base point, which was the back door to the house. We weren't allowed to camp by the door, and the trampoline was located in the far corner of the yard before the woods. When the hunters started to seek for me, they had to blow a whistle to alert the hiders. When I heard the whistle, I kept beneath the trampoline and waited it out, observing the 2 of them from a distance while they looked about. I was holding out for an opportunity to sneak up on the rear entrance. My target was the hot tub behind the house, as I could go right into the back door if I could conceal behind it. As I went behind the hot tub, I heard one of the garbage cans on the side of the house almost tumble over as Michael and Jason were peering at separate areas of the backyard. Then I observed that while it wouldn't have activated that light, the hot tub had a motion detecting light next to it. I turned to look around the corner to the side yard, where I noticed a tall individual in black clothes quickly making his way into the woods. My dad wasn't the one. After spending a few minutes exploring the woods, we headed outside to search for any strange automobiles on the street, but we didn't find any. We were plainly furious when my dad advised us to remain inside and play a game on my PlayStation. We walked inside and used my PlayStation to play a game. I reported to my companions what I saw once again, which was merely a tall man strolling into the woods beyond our home after seemingly almost toppling one of our garbage cans. We spoke about going back outdoors to sleep in the tent since they were all set up, and who knew if the person was still there hours later? We walked back outside in silence after our game to avoid waking up my dad. After a time of teasing each other and screaming things across tents, Mike and I tried to settle down and go to sleep. I wasn't asleep yet, but it seemed like Mike was. Michael and Jason shared the other tent. I started hearing walking sounds in the grass nearby approaching the tent, and then the zipper to the tent was unzipped, and I looked up and saw my dad looking inside the tent. He said, "What are you guys doing out here?" I replied to him something like they wanted to sleep out here, so we came back out. Then I took a closer look at the face peering into the tent. I realized it wasn't my dad, but some complete stranger looked to be my dad's age. It looked like he was about to come in when I screamed. Bloody murder like a little girl. Everyone woke up and Mike started to scream as well. The man grabbed our ankles and said to be quiet, but he gave up when he realized he was about to be exposed. He left the tent and disappeared. I told my friends to run inside the house, and as we were running to the house, my dad was already coming out the back door in response to our screams. I told him I don't know which way he went, but that the man from before was back. My dad ran around the yard screaming and taunting the creep to come back. If he has any balls, we heard it from inside the living room. My mom called the police, of course, and all that really happened when the police officer showed up was he took my recount of what happened, and I'm sure he made a police report, then left. It was good to have a police report at least so that the cops would be aware of a creep going around. I'm not sure if that man ever came back to our property or not, or if he ever got in trouble for something similar. Either way, it was pretty traumatizing and it could have. throughout 2019. I was at a friend's house, I'll call her M for the sake of the story. I was pretty excited for the sleepover. I couldn't wait to talk about all the middle school drama. Now, something you might want to know is M's house was deep in the woods. I mean, deep anywhere you looked, there was woods, and their nearest neighbor was about a half-mile away, but on the backside of her house was a cliff that led down to the ocean. The night at M's house started off pretty good. Our friend Sam was there too. We played truth or dare, hide and seek, and other teenage games. It was getting pretty late, but we decided to go on a walk down the gravel road that led to the other houses along the way. We asked her mom, and she said yes. So we started walking. After another 10 to 15 minutes. We saw a man who was walking on the other side of the street towards us. At first, we weren't thinking much. Maybe this dude was just taking an evening walk as well, but something that didn't seem right was that this man was wearing pretty thick clothing. I'm talking it almost looked like snow gear. And not to mention it was pretty warm out at that moment. It was like 60 degrees outside. We all looked at each other as we passed the guy, and that's when it hit us, Stash, the disgusting smell coming off that guy. It was absolutely horrible. Words could not describe how disgusting that smell was. It was so bad that after we finally got a few feet away, my friend took a deep breath, almost like she had been holding it. One of my friends ran into the woods and almost threw up at this point. We felt it was best to head back. Our friend who almost threw up was begging to go back anyway. We all agreed that it would be the best idea to head back on our way back. We passed him again. This time, we held our breath until we passed him. However, when we turned to look back, we saw that he was now following us rather than walking in the opposite direction. When Sam glanced back, she let out a spine-tingling scream that prompted Emily to do the same. What we witnessed still horrifies me to this day. This man had what seemed to be a knife and something pointed in his hand, and he was rushing right at us. As Sam and I began sprinting down the road, we started yelling. He eventually gave up running after us, but he remained still, simply standing there and seeing us go. We hurried directly back to M's home, closed the door, and decided not to notify her parents since they were already sleeping, not staying to see what his intentions were. A few hours later, we were watching a horror movie, and it was nearly 2 a.m. However, as I just indicated, I'm aware that it was a film. I was seated on one of the sofas since her home was perched on a cliff for a reason. M replied that it was most likely the same animal that had been coming for the previous 2 years after I told my friends. The deer, whom M had been feeding, would often come near this specific window. I was so delighted because I believed the deer was going to come right up to me. It was too dark to see anything as I peered out the window. Recalling what had occurred previously, M and Sam opposed when I recommended that we go outdoors and touch the deer. We resumed our movie viewing once I gave my consent. After an hour, we were all exhausted, so we turned off the TV and went under our covers. About 45 minutes later, M and Sam had fallen asleep, but I felt uneasy and decided not to sleep. I looked outside for a while, and while I was staring out, I noticed something moving in the woods to the left. I turned to look in that direction, but nothing moved, so I grabbed a flashlight from the bookshelf and pointed it in the direction of the movement. This was probably the worst thing I could have ever done because when I did, I saw that man again, but this time he didn't. It was around 4:30 in the morning and it was still dark outside. I didn't sleep at all, but I felt myself drifting off to sleep when I heard a knock on the door. I jumped off the couch when I heard it, knowing I shouldn't open it, but my curiosity got the best of me. Sam woke up, but he was a deep sleeper. I told Sam to look outside, but when we looked, he was gone. Sam looked at me with a pretty angry expression like I was just messing with her. She went back to bed, and I was left lying there. I moved to the door and peered through the peephole, but once again I saw nothing. My brain must be playing tricks on me. I returned to the couch and covered my head with my blanket once more. I eventually fell asleep, but I woke up at around 5 a.m. in a cold sweat. Something wasn't right again. My body kept shaking, and I was almost sick to my stomach. As soon as I woke up, I heard footsteps approaching and screamed. I quickly turned on the flashlight and saw the man from earlier standing in the corner of the room. As we woke up, Em and Sam also screamed, and they too awoke. At this point, the man fled the house. After a few minutes, Em's parents ran down the stairs, and we told them everything that had happened. When the police arrived and heard all of our stories, Em's mom called the police. Once they got there, Em's dad went down the road with a shotgun to see if he could find the man. After that, I went home, and my parents didn't tell me much. When I got there, they gave me hugs for what felt like hours, and I was never allowed to go to sleepovers again. It wasn't until years later that I realized how bad everything had gotten. The police eventually located the man, and inside the old shed that we were daring each other to enter contained 5 dead bodies. The stench I was on that man's body was the smell of decomposing flesh. If things hadn't turned out as planned, my friends and I would have. My job has introduced me to many interesting individuals in Manhattan, and I often go out to happy hour with my colleagues. Sebastian was hired as a new employee at our office in 2019. He appeared quite outgoing and cheerful when I first met him, and he was constantly grinning and laughing. He joined us for happy hour on Friday, and he was the life of the party, talking nonstop about all the places he's been and all the things he's done. Sebastian and I eventually got along and sometimes spent the weekends together, but the more I got to know Sebastian, the more I came to see that a lot of what he'd stated may not have been true. I hung around with him, even though I started to question everything he said since he was kind of funny and enjoyable to be around. Sebastian once invited me to come see him and his sister at their St. Pete Beach, Florida home. Because his mom, a wealthy woman with homes in St. Pete and Beverly Hills, Colorado, wouldn't be at the condo this weekend, Sebastian said it would be fun. My younger brother was asked to accompany me on my trip. We all traveled on the same plane. Sebastian's sister and I met at the airport. She seemed intriguing, enigmatic, and somewhat eccentric. The apartment had 3 bedrooms and was really fairly good. I told Sebastian that he would be sleeping on the sofa if we met any females since my brother Tyler and I shared a room. We went to some beach bars, which were quite great since we got there late, and it was beyond beach hour. Although the audience was older, Sebastian seemed to be becoming really inebriated for some reason. Vibe. When he began behaving violently against others, I had to encourage him to calm down. I had never seen him behave in such a way before. Furthermore, he was drunkenly making out with every female he encountered, and 9 times out of 10, the girls seemed uncomfortable. The jokes stopped being funny, and it grew more and more uncomfortable to be seen with Tyler, so I said goodbye. When Sebastian was chatting to his girlfriend, a bigger man got in his face. I had to pull Sebastian away and apologize to the man to defuse the situation as we were leaving. Sebastian called me a piece of X and pushed me for not having his back. Tyler and I suggested that he unwind, and his sister echoed our advice. I'm assuming Sebastian stormed back to the apartment, and his sister went silently after him. It was a rather peculiar way to begin the weekend. These females even approached Tyler and me after we had finished our drinks, making fun of us and asking how we knew. They told us they were heading downtown later and asked if we wanted to get together. We managed to get their numbers. Sebastian texted me back immediately after we answered that we were, informing me where they had gone. I walked back to the condo with Tyler and we unlocked the door. Instead of being unhappy as we had anticipated, Sebastian sprang from the sofa, grinned, and said, "Are we going out tonight?" I said, "Yeah, we should chill here for a bit first, though." After I informed them of our female count, he said, "How many girls?" His grin disappeared. Then Tyler informed him that the females had come up to us after he had gone, asking, "How do we know you?" For whatever reason. It was an error, but I think he was trying to playfully rag on him a bit. I started to sense something from both of them. Slamming the door shut, Sebastian rushed inside his room. It seemed to me that he must be really bipolar. "Is he always like this?" I muttered to his sister, to which she replied aloofly, "What?" Never mind. This was quite awkward. Sebastian needs to be better tomorrow, I was hoping. Tyler and I spent some time relaxing in our room, but Sebastian stayed inside. I knocked on his door and asked him if he wanted to go out with us, but he didn't respond. Eventually, as I was becoming more inebriated, we Ubered to meet those 2 females at a large clubby club. As much fun as we were having with the girls, Sebastian really started to blow up my phone. He would say things like, "Where are you? How could you just leave me here? Your stuff is going in the street. Don't come back. I don't know why I invited you here." I showed Tyler and the girls, and everyone was worried that something was wrong with Sebastian. Now that we had returned to the condo via Uber, Sebastian was just sitting on the couch by himself, staring at the wall. I asked him if he was okay. He looked at me, then looked away. "Yeah, I hope you had fun," before getting up and locking the door. Tyler and I talked about Sebastian and life in general for about 30 minutes before he went to bed. I addressed Tyler on the upper bunk. Sebastian was immediately outside the door, I said in a whisper to Tyler. He said, I know he must have had his ear up to the door or something listening to us. We remained still for a full 5 minutes, at which point we heard his footsteps leave the door. I slipped over to the door and opened it, curious to see who he was speaking to. Peering into the dimly lit living room, I saw Sebastian in the corner, his head down, and one hand resting on the wall. He was chuckling to himself and chatting. Joe is always such a stupid, he said, and then I heard him chuckle again. I'm Joe, he chuckled once again. You returned to the bottom bunk after softly shutting the door. He agreed when I suggested that we check into a hotel for tomorrow morning. We attempted to go to sleep, but for another 10 or 15 minutes, there was more laughing and chatting outside. When we heard footsteps outside the door once again, we went to his room and felt at last at ease enough to go to sleep. I was very exhausted by now, and I slept quite fast, but when I woke up, I knew that something had awakened me up. When I turned to face the door, Sebastian was there. I said, Yo, what are you doing? And he seemed to be attempting to choke me while shouting, You're a piece of... Sebastian said, You suck, Joe. I invited you here just for you to, on my life and talk about me to my sister. Tyler had to yank him off me and hurl him into the room's corner. I attempted to explain things to him and try to calm him down, but there was no logic in madness. Before taking a flight home on Sunday, we packed our luggage and took an Uber to a hotel, where we remained until Sunday. For the following 3 weeks, I saw Sebastian at work, but we never had a conversation or exchanged glances. He eventually moved to a new workplace, perhaps because of me. Although Sebastian seemed composed and ordinary at first, he was really a wounded and ill man, and our night spent at his place made me feel very afraid.